Hello FPL managers, welcome back to the FPL Optimized podcast. This is episode number 119 and today I am alone as Sertop couldn't make it. But with another deadline again on Friday, we still wanted to cover the latest data in this episode. I am Bas, the casual manager, and normally my co-host is Sertop, the data scientist. This is the podcast in which we combine analytics with the good old eye test. Data or grass, or data and grass? That's the question. Game week 25 isn't over yet as I'm recording on Wednesday night while the Villa-Liverpool game just kicked off. Unfortunately for me, Gakpo is still out, but I do have Salah and Slot playing for me tonight at the Liverpool side, and also Watkins and Rodgers for Villa. So still a few players in the game, and I'm hoping for something like a 3-2 Liverpool win, because I think, that might be the best for me to get points across the board. Let's see how that will work out. And I guess for many people, there is still something at stake tonight. All right, so I'll be covering the usual content today. And first, let's take a quick look at how our teams are performing this week. So Sertop is at 57 points, I am at 56, so it is close, and tonight we'll be deciding who will win. Sertop has Trent and Salah in the team, so again, I hope that Liverpool will concede because I don't have a Liverpool defender. We both have Slot in the team, so that's the same, and I have also Rodgers and Watkins. So again, for me it will be positive if Villa score a goal and if Rodgers or Watkins are involved. Crossing fingers for that. By the way, we never talked too much about it lately, but I am leading in the head-to-head league. Look at that, 13 versus 10. Let's see, maybe after today it will be 14 against 10. That would be nice. But that's it for now. So again, not really great game weeks. You can see our game week rank around 3 million. So, of course, we are hoping for some better performances in the weeks to come. And maybe again, looking at the data today will help us to make the right decisions. The first thing we can look at, as usual, is the fixture ticker. And one thing that we can notice here is that now Arsenal is at the top of the fixture ticker, which is quite new because in previous weeks it was always Liverpool. But starting with Arsenal, we can see that they have a few favorable games, with especially now West Ham at home for game week 26 and then also Fulham at home in game week 30. Number 2 is Chelsea, and they especially have some really good games coming up in game weeks 27 and game week 28, with first Southampton at home and then also Leicester at home. And even though Chelsea haven't been doing that good lately, I think, of course, those are two games that everyone is keeping an eye on. And we all have Palmer already. So the question will be, should we and can we bring in another Chelsea player? And if so, who should we bring in? We'll for sure come back on that later. Number 3 is Liverpool. So they are dropping a little bit in this ticker. And that's also because they have a blank in game week 29. But you can see that before and after game week 29, they have some really good fixtures with Southampton at home and also Everton at home. And also the Newcastle at home game in game week 27 is also a favorable fixture here based on the data, especially for the Liverpool offense. Then number 4 is Manchester City, who seems to be picking up some form. A really good win against Newcastle, with especially their new player Marmoush scoring a hat-trick. So I think we're all keeping an eye on that. Still a few difficult fixtures now, but then it's getting better as of game week 29 with Brighton at home and then the week after Leicester at home. So Man City, I think we will see many managers going back to some of the City options. And then 5th here in the ranking is Bournemouth. They're doing really well, as we know, and they also have some really good options for FPL. And what's more, their players are also really attractively priced, both in defense and also in midfield. And if we are looking at the standout games, then it's especially the one in game week 30, where they will face Ipswich at home. But I would say now also in game week 26 with Wolves at home, that's quite attractive as well. Then after that, Manchester United with a good fixture coming up in game week 27, Ipswich at home. And then we see Brighton, Tottenham, Wolves and Fulham. So yeah, I would say always good to take a look at the fixture ticker to see, the teams you should be focusing on for your transfers. Okay, now we looked at the teams. Let's now look at individual players, and we will have some charts again where we will look at it by position, and we'll start with the goalkeepers. Raya is still number one there, so we first will look at the top goalkeepers, total points for 6 game weeks horizon. And then at the bottom of the chart, you can also see it by value, so points per price. If we look at total points, Raya is number one with 24 points, 24.3 I should say, over 6 weeks. So yeah, a reliable option, of course, as we know with the Arsenal defense, but also quite an expensive option. Number two there is Kepa from Bournemouth, quite a reliable defense as well, and much cheaper than Raya. He has 22 points estimated for the 6 weeks horizon. And then number three is Onana from United with 20.8 points. And if we look at the goalkeepers value-wise, so again, points per price, then Kepa is the clear number one with 4.8 points per million, I believe I should say. And then also Sa from Wolves with a similar points there. And he's even a little bit cheaper at 4.3 million. So those are a few budget options. But again, I would say with the goalkeepers, it's really quite difficult this season to pick the best one. We've seen Sells doing quite well from Nottingham. He's not showing up here, or he is actually there on the top goalkeepers at number 5, but a bit lower there in the ranking. But it could be a kind of set and forget, I would say, because Nottingham, of course, is doing well and also reliable defense. For me, I went for Pickford now already quite a while ago on my wild card. And I think for me, that's also just my set and forget, at least for now, until I will use my second wildcard later. All right, let's take a look then at the defenders, where we used to see mostly the Liverpool defenders and mixed with the Arsenal ones. Now the Arsenal guys took over. So again, especially I think related to the blank that Liverpool will have in game week 29. If you are investing now, serious budget in defense, it might be better to go for the Arsenal guys. We see Gabriel at number 1 with a total of 25.8 points over the 6 game weeks horizon. Saliba number 2 and Trent number 3. And number 4 is Gvardiol. And yeah, I think at some point I will bring Gvardiol in because I never had him this season. But every game you see from City, he's so attacking, and he also delivered already this season. So I think many of us will probably will be looking at Gvardiol again. And then if we look at it by price as well, we see Huizen from Bournemouth, number 1, with 4.3 points if we divide the points by the price. Ait Nouri, number 2, and Colwill, number 3. I brought in Huizen actually in my last game week. He was at 4.4 million. I had Konza, but Konza wasn't playing, so I moved him to Huizen. Unfortunately, Bournemouth conceded in the previous game week. It was a bit unfortunate. But still, I think reliable defense, especially when they play at home. So I'm quite happy to have Huizen in my team. And now actually all of a sudden I have 2 Dutch players from Bournemouth in my team because I also have Kluivert, so that feels quite good. Always nice to have some Dutch guys in the team. But that's more like a personal opinion, I would say. All right, let's look at the midfielders. And number one top midfielder is still Palmer. I'm a little bit surprised about that. It has to do, of course, with the fixtures, especially the favorable ones, as we mentioned earlier, with Southampton and Leicester at home. But as I said, Chelsea haven't been looking too good, and also Palmer hasn't been delivering too much lately, and it's still quite a high price to pay. But yeah, looking at this chart, it's still kind of a no-brainer to keep Palmer in the team. Projected to score 41.7 points over the next 6 game weeks, and he has a bit of a gap to the number 2, which is Salah. Also there, again, a no-brainer. We all have him in our team, but it's something you need to navigate in game week 29, of course, when Salah will have a blank. So you need to have a backup plan for that. And then we see quite a gap to the rest of the midfielders. So yeah, you can choose whoever is your favorite. Number 3 is Mbeumo. Then we have Son, Ødegaard, and also Foden. And Ødegaard is probably now a good option with all the injuries at Arsenal. But there are other ones, of course. Trossard again had an assist in the last game week. And also Nwaneri, again, we talked about him last week. He's very cheap, and he looked really good also in the previous game. So that's definitely also an option. Then if we look more at the midfielders by value, so Dango is number 1, and then we have Semenyo and Kluivert. So the 3 Bournemouth guys are still there at the top of the chart. So definitely still Bournemouth is a team you can look at also for your midfielders. Then we have 2 Chelsea guys with Enzo and Nkunku. And I think especially Nkunku could be interesting, as he's now basically replacing Jackson at number 9. At least that's what he did in the previous game. Let's assume that he will keep that spot. Or let's say if you believe that he will keep that spot, then I think you could definitely take a punt on Nkunku, because out of position midfielder, 5.7 million, quite interesting to bring him in, especially with the few good fixtures coming up for Chelsea. And then also we have Schade from Brentford on the chart. Then finally, let's also look at the attackers. And again, top forwards by total points. Number 1 with quite some distance is Haaland. 37.5 points over the 6 weeks horizon. So quite some points. Of course, if you can afford him, as we know, it's not cheap. Or he's not cheap, I should say. 14.7 million. But it is looking more like a good option again, I would say, with City finding back some form, and also with the players that they brought in the January transfer window. It looks like Haaland will get a bit more support again, even though in the last game week he didn't score. It's just, of course, a matter of time that he will score again. So Haaland, definitely one to keep an eye on. Number 2, Isaac from Newcastle with 28.9 points. So you can see quite some gap with Haaland in terms of total projected points. Number 3 is Cunha. I think also Cunha will be back in many teams quite soon again, as the Wolves fixtures are getting better. And then number 4 is Wood, and number 5 is Wissa. And if we look at it by value, so projected points per price, then Cunha is the number 1, and Raul is number 2 from Fulham. Also really quite consistent, I should say, doing well every week, more or less. Raul for Fulham, so one to keep in mind. Definitely a good option. But if you look at the points divided by price, you see that's actually not too much difference. Also with the number 3 and number 4, which are Vardy and Wissa. So yeah, if you're looking for some value options, there's actually quite some choice. Personally, I like Cunha also more for the longer term. As I said, the Wolves fixtures are getting better towards the end of the season. Okay, so we covered all the different players by position. Let's now also then look at the optimal wildcard team for game week 26. So I will just read it out for the people who are listening to the podcast. So in goal we have Raya, Then in defense, Gabriel, Kerkez and Dalot. And then midfield with Trossard, Mbumo, Palmer and Salah. And then attack with Welbeck, Beto and Isaac. And on the bench we have Dubravka, who took the spot again from Pope in the Newcastle goal. And we also have Nkunku, Munoz and Colwill. So a few Chelsea players on the bench for the upcoming favorable fixtures. What's interesting to see here is that the solver is picking Mbumo as captain. And we'll look at that later again. The captaincy matrix for next week is quite mixed. There's not really a standout candidate, mostly because Salah is playing away to City. So this could be an interesting game week. The next one, as probably different, or many managers will choose different captains. We also can see in the optimal team Welbeck from Brighton back in the team. He's back at Brighton. He took back the starting number 9 position, and he's been he's been doing quite well. So it's looking good, I would say, for the next games. If you think Brighton will pick up some form, then Welbeck could definitely be an option to go for. And as I mentioned earlier, Nkunku is an interesting pick, and you can see that the solver is also going for him. He's not playing, the solver isn't playing Nkunku in game week 26 because Chelsea is going away to Villa, but then bringing him in for game week 27 at home to Southampton, and then also for game week 28 at home to Leicester. And after that, the solver will sell him for Kluivert. And the other thing that the solver will do, another interesting one, is in game week 29, we'll sell Salah for Semenyo. And that's of course because Salah will blank, but you can see that the solver will then just go without Salah for a while. And that's because it will go from Beto to Haaland. So we can basically see a shifting of the funds from Salah up to game week 28, then moving to Haaland in game week 29, and then leaving Haaland in the team because the City fixtures are looking better. So, and as I said earlier, I think this is probably something we will see more people do. There will be, of course, people that will be using their free hit for 29. So then, you could keep Salah in the team. But for the people who don't have or who don't want to use the free hit for 29, well, either you put Salah on the bench, of course, for one game week, or like the solver is doing, you could shift the funds and go for Haaland because City will have quite a good game in 29 against Brighton. So that's only game week 29, of course, so we still have 3 game weeks in between that. But still, as we always say, right, you need to plan ahead, especially when there is a blank game week coming up. Any transfer you will use, you should do that with having that blank game week in mind, or at least to have a plan in mind for it. So, take a look at what the solver is doing here, and maybe it could give you some inspiration for what you could do for your team. All right, let's move then to the chart with the captaincy options. And as I mentioned earlier, it's quite mixed. Usually we see Salah as the clear number 1. At least that's what we saw in recent game weeks. But if we look at the first row there, the ensemble line, so the mix of all the models, and then when you look at the total points, you can see that it's really close. So no matter which pick you go for, there are different options, and in terms of projected points, they're all quite close to each other. So just talking through it for the ensemble model, number 1 is Salah away to City. He's projected to get 6.19 points on average. Then number 2 is Isaac at home to Nottingham with 6.0. So just a little bit lower than Salah. Number 3, really close behind Isaac, is Palmer with 5.99 points. He's away to Villa. And then number 4, we have Mbumo, 5.78 points, away to Leicester. And then number 5, we have Ødegaard at home to West Ham, 5.72 points. And 6th, Haaland at home to Liverpool, 5.59 points. And the last one, Trossard at home to West Ham, 5.50 points. And I went through this in a bit of detail, just again to mention that all the points are really quite close. So yeah, I would say take a look at the games, decide which team you think will do well, of course, and then see if you want to go for that player. For example, Newcastle at home, usually you could bet on them, but of course they play Nottingham, who has a really reliable defense. But if you think that Newcastle can do well against Nottingham, then of course Isaac is a good option. I'm just thinking now, what will I do? Well, probably I will keep it on Salah, to be honest, because I think Liverpool have been doing so well also in the big games, and it's also Salah who will deliver in the big games. So I wouldn't mind to just keep it on Salah. And beyond that, he's also still, even though the differences are small, he's still the number one here in the ensemble model. But let's look at the differences between the different models. So Fantasy Football Fix also has Salah as number one. Fantasy Football Hub also Salah number one. Fantasy Football Scout has Palmer as number one. FPL Review, the premium model, has Ødegaard as number one, and Mikkel Tokvam has Mbumo as number one. So yeah, again, different options. Not easy this week, so good luck with making that decision for your team. Then final chart is that we also have then the captaincy mix, or let's say the captaincy option for the future game weeks. And we can each time see the number one and number two. So let's just take a look at the ensemble model for game week 26. As just covered, it's number one Salah, number two Isaac. Then for game week 27, it's number one Palmer, number two Salah. So again, the good home game for Chelsea will probably see many people putting the armband on Palmer. Then game week 28. It's again Salah, because in that game week we have Liverpool at home against Southampton, and I have seen a few people mentioning it that this could be an option for your triple captaincy chip if you still have it, and if you want to use it on Salah, who won't have, or most likely won't have a double game week anymore, then game week 28 might be the best option, as Liverpool will play at home against Southampton. But again, it will just be a single game week then. That week, you could actually also go for Palmer, who is at home against Leicester. Then game week 29, we see Haaland at number one with a home game against Brighton, and Bruno Fernandes at number two. And then game week 30, Haaland number one with the home game against Leicester, and number two is Salah. And to close it off, game week 31, we have the top captaincy option Son, because Spurs play against Southampton at home, and number two is Salah with Fulham away. So yeah, I would say the reason why this chart is interesting is, it gives a view on which key players you should keep on your team. And you can see that Salah during the horizon is still either number one or number two. Except for game week 29, where Liverpool blanks. So, there's still enough reason, I would say, to keep Salah in your team. But as covered earlier, the shift to Haaland could be interesting, as he's the top candidate for game week 29 and game week 30. And we also see Palmer as a really good candidate for game week 27 and game week 28. All right, that's the final chart for today. I covered quite a lot of data, I think. I hope you found it useful. For my team, what will I do? I think actually that I will save some transfers, as the team is still looking quite good. And especially for game week 26, it's quite difficult or I don't see really any reason to make changes. The only thing which is a bit in my mind is Arsenal, because they have a really good home game, I would say, against West Ham, and I only have Gabriel in the team. But yeah, I'm not too excited about all the options at the moment, so I don't think I will go for that. So no, quite happy with the team. And what I will likely do is I will save some transfers, as I will need to do some surgery for the blind game week 29. Currently, I still have 2 Liverpool players, 2 Villa players, and 3 Newcastle players. So that's a total of 7, and I can only keep 3 for the blind game week. So yeah, I will need at least 4 transfers until then, and yeah, that should work out. I will have that. And for the moment, I don't think I need to use a transfer. All right, I'll wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed this episode, even though it was just with me alone. But Certup did prepare the data, so Certup, thanks a lot for that. And we hope that the data will help you with your decision making for game week 26. Remember again that the deadline is already on Friday. Next week we should be able to record a normal episode, including then also a mini league update, as there won't be any games played during the week. You can subscribe to our podcast so you'll get notified when the next episode is out, and you can also follow us on X. For Certup it's at CertalBilal, and for me it's at BelfiBB. And keep in mind that you can find a lot of data and analysis on fploptimized.com. All right, that's it for now. Until next time, stay curious and stay analytical. Goodbye.